You're listening to the Self-Disruption Show on iHeartRadio with Audrey Lawrence, hacking business, science, and psychology to smash your goals.
This is Audrey Lawrence, and you're listening to the Self-Disruption Show on iHeartRadio and WWPR in Tampa Bay, where we hack science, psychology, and neuroscience to get us closer to our goals. Well, today I have such a fun guest. He's actually here to talk about an app. Now, when we all think of apps, we sometimes think of driving apps or dating apps, but my friend Sacha Nasan is here today to talk about a new kind of app. Sacha, what's going on?
Hi, thank you for having me. Everything's good except for typical London weather. It's summer and we had a nice week, but now it's going back into gray and rain.
Well, it's not too dissimilar here in New York. We were so hot, and all of a sudden, like today, we need umbrellas. So London and New York can definitely parallel the same weather.
Absolutely.
Well, so I know, Sacha, from us going back and forth, that you originally had this idea that went from dating into well-being, which is so funny to me because when we think about a dating app, we think very often we probably could use a well-being app after. So tell us about your journey from that juxtaposition.
Sure. So I co-founded with my cousin, my first cousin, actually. We co-founded together a dating app focused on blind dating. It's called Blindly. And the concept there it still exists, that people go together on a 3-minute blurred video call. So imagine you're having like a WhatsApp call or a FaceTime call on the app, but there's a blur filter that kind of makes it a bit more fun because you're not looking at someone basically at how they look or how sexy they are. You're trying to judge based on other things like the voice or the body image. And then of course, during this 2-minute video call, you can unblur. So you do see that person, but your first judgment filter or the first thing you look at is not necessarily how they look, but how they behave or how they speak or anything else. So it's trying to flip that equation from traditional dating apps like Tinder, where you're literally just judging a book by its cover, to making people judge here on other aspects, not just on how someone looks, because it's not really what you only look for when you look for a relationship. It plays a role, but it shouldn't be the first thing you look at.
I love it. It's like the X factor of dating apps where, you don't get to see who's singing. You just hear, or in this case, you understand aspects about people without factoring in. And that's curious to me. Like, how did people respond to that? Like, did you find that people connected with people maybe they wouldn't normally have?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So we actually had completely opposite reactions of people. We had some people, this was even before the app, people said, I don't even want to speak on a video call with someone. Why would I want to do a video call, right? If I don't want to do a voice call. And then others said, this is awesome. I don't like wasting time around on Tinder and matching and not speaking. Here I get to have straight away an interaction. But when we launched, we still saw the same thing. So we have reviews that are bad, we have reviews that are good. However, what we noticed is our audience today tends to be slightly on the, I would say, older and not necessarily old, but like old, late 20-ish, not students, not early 20-ish, people who are looking for mostly fun or casual things. They go on Tinder, but people who are 25 all the way to 35, 40, they kind of know that Tinder is there and it sometimes works, but usually it's just used for fun. And they end up being on Blindly because they have straight away an interaction with someone. They don't need to match with that person. If they don't like it, if they don't like the person after 2 minutes, they can just decide not to match. If they do, they match, it opens the chat and they can continue chatting.
It's such a cool social science. Like, this is an opportunity to really create a data set to find out what we're really attracted to in people. And we all know, the data's in that it's not exclusively aesthetics. The research shows that what draws us together doesn't keep us together. So it seems like your app was ahead of the time. So tell me where you are now, because you've made this really cool pivot, which is probably a tube-sided market.
Yes, sure. So you're spot on. Where we're right now is actually a well-being app. And before I touch a bit more into that, I'll just explain how it went from a dating to a well-being app, because you said it right? It's a big pivot. And the reason is thanks to COVID, I would say. Basically, we launched Blindly in December of 2019. So 2-3 months before the whole Western world exploded with COVID, in the famous 2020. And we launched with video dating, not knowing, of course, that we'd be hit by this thing called COVID-19. And suddenly the whole world is locked down at home around March, and they're looking for video dating apps. The Tinders, Bumbles, the big ones out there didn't have video dating yet. It wasn't their pipeline, but it wasn't their life yet. It was somewhere down, a few years down the road. And there was this huge demand with very few dating apps that are video-based. So people started going to Blindly. We had a lot of press. We were featured in Forbes, in TechCrunch, in Vox, Men's Health, all sort of different things, which gave us users. And very quickly, the big guys caught up. They had the video up, 2 months later, and they ate us. We're a tiny fish in a big pond. But the interesting thing for us is because we had so many users, what we saw in the data was that people were not using Blindly necessarily to date. They were using it to make friends and to speak because they were stuck at home and they needed someone to feel the solidarity of being stuck at home. And at that point, we realized, well, hold on. We created a dating app. We're sort of creating an app where people can talk to a stranger with a blur filter. And people like that because they don't have to divulge who they are. They can keep anonymous. They can confess certain things without feeling the need to be judged or without feeling judged, right? It's create this safe space. So long story short, we started thinking, why don't we make a well-being app? We should recycle the blur technology, the blur video technology that we created, make it into a separate app and allow people to speak with someone to help, with minor concerns, basically. And the answer there was actually to use that recycled technology, but not create a peer-to-peer network like we did Blindly, but to connect people with a psychology postgrad. And the reason why it's a psychology postgrad is because let's say today you're frustrated about something, right? You don't necessarily suffer from a serious depression or anxiety or stress. By all means, if that happens, a person like that should see someone professional. But in many cases, the average Joe just sits down at home and has a fight with a boyfriend or the girlfriend or a fight with a boss or whoever it is. They just want to kind of vent and speak these things out. So who do you first go to, Audrey? Who would you go to?
Your friends, which are,
your friends,
in my case,
right?
I love them, but I might as well pick up like an 8-ball and shake it because my friends are not solid for advice. Sorry,
exactly.
loves.
And that's what we noticed. The problem is people go to their friends, but there's two things.
But they're
friends.
not home.
One,
they're never around.
Well, one, they're never around. That's a third thing. Today most people speak via the phone, but even if they're available to the phone, one, they're biased. They're not always going to tell you what you want to hear. And they're not expert at what they do or what they say. But also two, it might be a personal issue. You might be too embarrassed to speak about with your friend. So let's say your friends are not an option. Who do you go to next?
Seriously, like you're going to hear crickets behind me because my list is really short. It's like a list of biased people who text me only. Like I have relationships with everybody only text message. If I called one of my friends to talk, they'd think like I was announcing somebody's death. Like we just don't even communicate like that. Okay. The idea of your app is brilliant.
So there you go. So, friends is one option, but not always an option. The next step, if there's no one who can help you, is typically seeking professional help, right? And that's a scary jump because if you really need that professional help, by all means, you should get it. But if a person just wants to get something out, they don't need to go jumping from that informal friends and family support bubble to suddenly a big jump to professional therapy.
There's no middle ground. There's no middle ground.
Exactly.
And most of us,
huge gap.
Yeah, huge, massive. As I think of it, I think you've identified a massive gap in what there is in social offerings. Most of us will thumb through our Instagram post and like somebody's positive inspiration. But here's what science tells us about that. We know that it is not enough to correct our brain, our heart, our actions by just posting. It's not enough to see a quote and follow that quote to get results. You need to have cognitive behavioral help. And this is such a cool fit. And honestly, I've sat in some really good therapist office who are professionals, and I've sat in some upcoming undergraduate people getting hours in when I was observing as a student. You know what? When they're at that level, in my personal humble opinion, you're really getting the relationship that you need. You're getting guidance and coordinates. I would imagine that if you were speaking to one of these people on your app and you needed more help, they would probably immediately say, gosh, you need to reach out to deeper resources. This is out of my skill set.
Exactly. And we have protocols in place and everything ready for such situations because we need to. Yes. But you're right. Yeah, there's a huge gap. And then we started thinking, well, what's the solution to that gap? And like I mentioned before, the solution happened to be psychology postgrads, because they're somehow superior to a friend. They know more, they've had the education, they've had some practical hours, but they're unbiased, and they're somehow inferior to a therapist, because they're not licensed, they're not going to treat you like a patient, they can't give you therapy. So they're kind of stuck in these two worlds, which makes it a perfect person to speak to, a perfect person that you can confess to, get advice to, get some clarity, get some guidance, an outside set of eyes.
It's like a
and that's the
dial-a-priest.
marketplace we created.
You said confession. It made me think like dial-a-priest. I'm not Catholic,
Yes.
and I'm not exactly sure how that works, so I don't want to offend anybody. But I'll tell you, the opportunity to hop on the phone and vent to something that is better than a wall, or my girlfriend, which P.S., I have a girlfriend who's not so much in my circle anymore, but her solution to everything was have a glass of wine. I mean, some people are actually going to do damage to your process.
Yes.
Like I could ask her anything and she'd be like, Audrey, my solution for this is pop open a bottle of wine, which, isn't a practice that works for me necessarily.
I call it a quick fix. That's not a long-term fix.
But
right?
It's just funny when we think about our network, our resources, the people around us that can just move us from functioning through stuck and back into that momentum state. How that process happens is not by internalizing. Turns out when we get stressed out, it goes into a part of our brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is that emotional center that, I'm nervous, I'm upset, I'm thinking about it. It's not necessarily the most positive thinking part of our brain, but the problems part of our brain that solves problems is the frontal cortex. Now, the funny thing is that these two parts of our brain don't always communicate. So just when we say things out loud, we solve problems. That's why it's so easy to hear somebody say, hey, why don't you do this? You've been talking about it. And you say, oh yeah, okay. Because when we say things out loud, it's not necessarily that we didn't know it. It's that we weren't able to vocalize it and put it to the help desk part of our brain. And this is a perfect solution for that. Sometimes we just have to say things out loud, and to say things out loud to a professional or to a pseudo professional or somebody who's certainly more trained than my girlfriend who told me to drink wine. Sounds like an amazing, so how do I sign up? Because now I'm like, okay, you're going to lose money on me today, Sacha. Let me tell you, I am dialing in. They'll be like, put a block on her. We're not going to take any calls from her anymore. She's used up all of her tokens. How does this work?
Yeah, sure. So, you said you need to talk, and many people need to talk. I think it's ingrained into our DNA. It's super important. We were grown up as tribes, and today we're social animals in a sense, social beings. We need to talk. And that's what you get on the app, which we call Relief. The app is called Relief, and we hope that by people talking, you get that sense of relief. So the way to find us is basically on the App Store. You can just type in Relief. You'll find there Relief, clear your mind. And sorry, actually, we improved the name to Relief, improve your well-being, actually. So you'll find us there. Otherwise, our website is minirelief.com, because relief.com was obviously taken, but we call it like a small relief, a mini relief. So minirelief.com. And the good thing is that because these are psychology postgrads, it becomes very affordable. So not just is it casual and doesn't come with a taboo of therapy, because it's not therapy, but also it's anonymous. You have that blur filter, which protects you. You can remove it if you want, but you can remain anonymous if you want to. And it makes it affordable, because the sessions are basically £10 in the UK. That's $13.99, I believe. So it's very, very affordable and quick. Yes.
Yeah, I think that it is a truly untapped space. I think you probably are going to have some people knocking off this format, but it is, I think you really put your finger on the tip of this, that this is a great opportunity. Tell us about some of the publications you've been and where you've been featured.
So right now, we only launched 4 months ago. So we're very, very new. We do have today 25 postgrads on the app. They cover a lot of different cultures and languages. Everyone by default has to speak English, but we have Spanish, Italian, Persian, we have really Hindu, a lot of different languages. We haven't been publicized in many websites, just 2 small psychology blogs. The reason is because we haven't really put this out in marketing. We're now started since this month to be a lot more active on our social media and our content, which will couple next month with a big PR push that we'll try, because we're just a small bootstrap startup. Think about the garage style startup, the way Apple started in the garage and grew. I don't think we'll get to the size of Apple, maybe one day, but we're without investors behind us. So our marketing is limited too.
I think it's great. I'll make sure that there's a connection at one Audrey Lawrence on Instagram, which is really where a big part of my audience sits. We have a lot of friends in Tampa. The Tampa Bay area has been so amazing to my show, and a lot of them follow. But I don't think it's going to take too much for people to figure this out. You know what? When you explained it as a dating app that sort of transitioned into this opportunity for people to chat with somebody who's post-grad, I'm like, yeah, this is amazing. There's an opportunity to help people. So let's talk about, now I'm going to put you under the wire and I'm going to bring some ideas to your head. Think about donating time. I want you, and you don't have to answer now because this isn't pressure. I want you to think about how you can give 10 hours back to not necessarily my listeners, but as a giveaway. There's a need for people out there to try it, audition it. You have such an opportunity. You have your pulse on the opportunity to help people connect with their own need and help these postgrads get some hours in, I imagine, so they get closer to writing their thesis or moving past that place in their life. So I'm going to challenge you guys just to think about it. I'll circle back with you guys in another month when we do a follow-up show, and we'll find out how we can give away a couple hours to our listeners so that there's an opportunity to get some feedback in our market and see how people are responding to it, which is really fun. Sorry, I totally just put you under the fire there, but I think it's a good idea.
No, absolutely. And the postgrads, like you said, right, it gives them practice, but it also gives them income. And we just the marketplace in between. And to answer your questions, absolutely, we can do a giveaway with some of your audience. We can give free sections out. We can discuss this maybe after, and some of your audience can try it for free.
I'm just fishing for me, because most of the reason I have this show is one PhD or therapist after another. And at the end, I'm like, doc, I have a problem with this. He's like, Audrey, I think this is just a whole big ruse for me to get free therapy. I love it. Well, Sacha, tell us one last time where we can learn more about you. I want to know social media. I want to know your website again and the app, anything we need to know, because you've got such content and I want to make sure I'm not cutting any corners for the listeners.
Sure. So we'll start with the website. The website, as I said, is minirelief.com. So think about that kind of small relief you get, minirelief.com. Then on the website, there's a button that brings you to the App Store link. The app is currently just available on iOS, so iPhone and iPad, not on Android yet. But if you type in on the App Store Relief, you'll find the app too. We're like a very clear logo, which has blue in the background and a little E in the white on top. And then our Instagram is little at relief.app. So basically, if you just type in relief.app, you'll find us on Instagram. We've just started, like I said, posting a bit more content. We basically try to normalize speaking, right? So the same way you go to your hairdresser and you talk without the hairdresser being a therapist, we want to normalize speaking here too. Like you said, it's very important to speak. So we're giving examples. It's like speaking to your Uber driver, like speaking to your hairdresser, like speaking to the bartender at night. This is the kind of thing we're trying to normalize. People shouldn't see this as therapy because it's not. It doesn't come with a taboo. It's kind of this casual conversation that helps you and anyone out more than a friend can help you out because they're biased, and it creates that little safe space that we all need.
Yeah, I love it. It's brilliant. I'm going to speak to the tabooness for a moment because there is certainly a regionalism at it. And I know, Sacha, we come from a similar place in the world originally, back in that Northern European space. But I'll say here in New York, it doesn't, thank God, it no longer comes with a taboo. Taking care of yourself,
right.
Taking care of yourself. And I mean, getting your hair cut, getting your nails done, taking care of yourself, hygiene, mental, emotional is a necessary part of what it is to achieve your life's outcome. And we need to frame the ability to hit our goals by being coachable. You have to be willing to say, you know what? I don't know everything in my career. We know from the various voices that we learn by having more people around us. More people shape us. It shapes our brain. It shapes our outcome. Mentors help our ability. It's no different. You wouldn't go be a professional athlete without a coach. You wouldn't go run a marathon without a coach. You wouldn't go cut your hair without a hairdresser. In my case, I sometimes hack at it. But the point is that why would you expect your life, your brain, your ability, your emotions, all of the things that depict the outcome of your own success, and not use that same methodology to coach yourself through it? True winners dig into coaching at all levels, and they find people to accelerate their success. And I think nothing better than helping you understand yourself deeper.
Yes, I completely agree with you. I think this is music to our ears.
I love it. Well, I'm excited to try. I'm excited for the listeners to get excited. DM me on Instagram at one Audrey Lawrence. Let's hear about who wants this package. I'm going to shake a couple hours out of Sacha. So, you know what? We'll make sure that the energy is there for people to try. I'm very happy to do an on-air one and share with somebody. And everybody who knows me knows I am like an open book. Like I'll blab. So I'd love to share with people what this transaction feels like, what it looks like, what the takeaway is, because at the end of the day, putting energy into ourselves so that we can fulfill our gifts for other people is what this is all about. And if you're busy helping other people and you're not taking care of number one, then you truly won't be able to do that. I'm going to hunch that if you take 20 minutes and work on yourself, you're going to magnify the power for what you can do for those around you and the world.
Yes,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Well, I appreciate you being here with us today, Sacha. We're going to make sure everybody gets in contact with you. This is Audrey Lawrence. I'm so grateful for my listeners checking in. You're listening to the Self-Disruption Show on iHeartRadio and WWPR, where we hack science, psychology, and business to get us closer to our goals. Be sure to follow us on all of our social media followings, but especially our new push on Instagram at one Audrey Lawrence.
Thank you for listening to the Self-Disruption Show with Audrey Lawrence. To learn more, go to audreylawrence.org and follow us on your favorite social media. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Grab your free downloadable gift at audreylawrence.org/gift.